Welcome on into the Fantasy Football Forge. My name is Steve, and this is my second time recording the intro. You will see when I change over. Had some malfunctioning microphone early, and then I recorded the running backs and the quarterbacks and the tight ends. So hopefully the sound is good for the rest of the video once you see me change into my other outfit from my original recording, and hopefully it's good for the quarterbacks, tight ends, and running backs video. Those will come out later this week. Running backs video this evening, quarterbacks and tight ends tomorrow morning. So check those out when they come out. Don't forget to like these videos, guys. It really helps. I didn't remember to ask you to like it in the first recording here for the wide receiver video. You're going to hear me reference that in the running backs video. Well, now I've asked that, so I lied. Now in the running backs video, posthumously, whatever. Guys, we've got some injuries. We've got some interesting usage. We've got how I did on my loves and my fades last week, and then we will get into the rankings, which is where you will see me switch up into the original recording. The sound will also be a little bit different. It's coming through a little bit louder this time around. I adjusted the rankings, whatever. I adjusted the audio, so hopefully it's just better. For the injuries coming into this week, CeeDee Lamb had a concussion. He does not play until that was a Thursday night football game, so he is going to have extra time to potentially recover from this concussion. I am currently ranking him because it's not going to change too much in the rankings, but if he does not play, George Pickens would move up like one spot. I think I'll talk about that when we get to that in the rankings. Also, T. Higgins suffered a concussion. It's his second in 3 weeks. I will not be surprised if we don't see any more T. Higgins rest of season, but nonetheless, not expecting him to come back this week. The interesting usage information comes from the JJ Zachariason data dump that he puts out there onto social media every Monday morning. I go through it, I pick through what I think is most relevant for us going forward, and I add some context to some of that and turn that data into information for us going forward, or at least some of it. So, let's get through that. Rashid Shaheed saw his highest target share since joining Seattle this last week, so there could be something there. Even with Alec Iomanner available, Shimray and on the field, Shimray DK saw a season-high target share, and he ran the most routes for the Titans, so seems to be the guy going forward there. Noah Brown ran the most routes for the Commanders. I don't really know what to do with that unless you're in like 16-team league. Maybe that could be some sort of bet you could take if you are desperate and in the playoffs. And Emeka Egbuka is being heavily targeted, but has been incredibly inefficient on those targets. So we are still seeing a lot of targets, so that's good. But yeah, the inefficiency really goes season long now, even including the great efficiency he was having early season, which I was talking about at that time as a concern. Devon Vele had a season high target share in week 14, so still saw the targets. Production didn't come through, but those targets were still there to a season-high amount. Michael Pittman had a season-high target share in Week 14. Jacoby Myers is on a 4-week heater, and he's been with Jacksonville for 5 weeks, so basically since his second week being there, it's been really good. For the second week in a row, Pat Bryant is getting on the field more than Troy Franklin. Pat Bryant saw a 60% route share, Troy Franklin a 40% route share this last week. The week before that, it was closer, and prior to that, we had been seeing that gap closing in for like 5 weeks in a row. So it seems like this is Pat Bryant is now the wide receiver 2 for Denver. Davante Adams has averaged fewer than 40 yards across the past 4 games. That's lower than I had thought. I did in the offseason. I was nervous about Davante Adams to the extent where I knew the touchdowns would be good. I didn't know they would be this good, but I didn't know about the yardage being good, and that made him, to me, a boom-bust prospect this year. It's been pretty much all boom. I'm not too concerned about this week, though. They're going up against Detroit in a high flying matchup, expected to be a lot of touchdown opportunities for the Rams against Detroit. So whatever. Michael Wilson, with and without. Michael Wilson, with and without Marvin Harrison Jr. in full PPR, he's been averaging 30.8 fantasy points per game. With Marvin Harrison Jr. on the field, he's only averaged 5.8 full PPR fantasy points per game. That is a massive difference, and I am currently ranking Marvin Harrison Jr. this week, so that is why you will see Michael Wilson lower in my rankings, but of course, that would change, and I'll talk about that a little bit with the rankings, I do believe. And then Jaden Higgins' route share took a dip after we had been seeing him get more usage and everything, so that is a little bit concerning going forward, just something to keep an eye on with him. Of course, the 1 week I go to use him. So that last week's loves and fades. Before we get into the rankings, I loved Zay Flowers, Michael Pittman, Jordan Addison, and for the reasons that I loved them, they all came through to some extent in terms of that. Michael Pittman, Jordan Addison don't have big weeks. Zay Flowers does have a very nice, good week for you. But Jordan Addison does have several big plays, which was why I liked him. Just wasn't big enough and didn't result in a touchdown. And then Michael Pittman did get heavily targeted, which I kind of expected. And even with Daniel Jones going out to injury, that still came through after that, which is good for us moving forward if you're going to have to play Michael Pittman. But I don't like that this week so much. And then for my fades, I faded Chris Godwin, Adonai Mitchell, and Dontavian Wicks. All good fades, so I did really well with my loves and my fades for the wide receivers this last week, which is good because I did very poorly for the running backs. But, I don't think I need to go into too much. I mean, Adonai Mitchell does still get a good amount of targets, so going forward, that is a good thing. Although, if Garrett Wilson were to return, that is something to also keep in mind for Adonai Mitchell, and that target share probably not remaining where it has been. All right, that is it. Let's move on into the rankings to my past self. Hopefully this sounds good for that, otherwise I'll have to edit around it or re-record it. So, that will bring us on to the first tier of the wide receiver rankings. There's a very clear-cut top 7 here in Puka, JSN, Jamar Chase, Devontae Adams, Nico Collins, Rashee Rice, Amon-Ra St. Brown. No doubt about that, but we'll count Drake London here, my wide receiver 8, into this tier, George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb. Like I said, I am currently ranking CeeDee Lamb. If he doesn't play, George Pickens will just move up ahead of Drake London. Against Minnesota, we would have some of those same concerns about just the total amount of opportunities. Teams tend to run against Minnesota a lot and not have to pass against them a lot. If that Minnesota offense can continue to keep it going a little bit, though, and against Dallas, that's definitely possible, maybe there will be a few more targets there also for George Pickens throughout the game. Then we've got Jalen Waddle, A.J. Brown, here at wide receivers 11 and 12, just making it into this tier. Even this next tier, I think we're still in pretty much like just start these guys. There are a couple names though in the next tier that are we're getting a little bit more shaky. So over here on the left hand side, what you're seeing here for these columns in general, green. Not even in general. Green, good. The darker the green, the better. White, neutral, average for that column. And then red, the deeper the red, the worse that number is in this column. Over here on the left-hand side, these are the average fantasy points per week based on consistency, or they're tweaked for consistency. I call this my equalized value. I bring that up because I think I will mention that a couple times this week in some of that name, a couple times when describing for my loves and my fades, why I love them and fade them. For the targets here, average targets per week, I do eliminate a game where a player gets injured in the first quarter or something like that. I do remove those from these data sets to help them better represent a full game played, because when you play a player, you're expecting them to play a full game. Injuries, unfortunately, do happen sometimes, but I don't think that should really impact how we view the player in a game where they're coming in healthy at this time of the year. Maybe nobody's healthy. And then the spread and the implied point total give us an idea game flow and the scoring upside, respectively, for those two columns. Let's move on to where we're starting to maybe have some decisions, have some doubts about starting these guys. Tetairoa McMillan, just get out there, play him. He's a good play this week. I just think that you have to. Chris Olave, you're probably going to have to play him too this week against Carolina. Garrett Wilson, if he plays this week, I am projecting him to come back. We'll see. No guarantee on that, but it really doesn't impact too much. I guess it would impact Adonai. So that would be something where maybe I'm a little bit high on Adonai Mitchell because I have Garrett Wilson ranked currently. We're going to come back to these wide receiver rankings once we get into these next tiers, and there will be plenty of fluctuation through the week. I am sure of it. So there's still some settling to be done with these rankings, but I just based on, the production, the targets for Garrett Wilson, if he is coming back immediately here this week, I think we got to get him out there. Zay Flowers, another good matchup this week against Cincinnati, so we'll go at that again. Igbuka, I think probably a good matchup here against Atlanta. The targets, once again, have been there. The production on the season is still as good as any of these other guys have been playing on the season in this tier, in the next tier. I'm going back to the well here. Maybe a little bit too bold on it. I don't know, but I am. Justin Jefferson, we're going to go to the well here. Did see J.J. McCarthy play fairly well. You would think that they're probably going to be a squeaky wheel type of game coming anytime here. And against Dallas, you can feel pretty good about that, that potential for the best wide receiver in the game in Justin Jefferson, or at least one of the best. Wan'Dale Robinson all the way up here at wide receiver 19 going against Washington. It's a good matchup. There's a lot of question marks for wide receivers. He just jumps right ahead of the group into this tier, and Terry McLaurin, with how he's been playing with the matchup against the New York Giants, a really good matchup. We're going to go back to that as well. So, hopefully we're right on those. That's going to bring us where we're going to start to love and fade, guys. Where were we? Right up to DK Metcalf on the screen. So this is our first big tier of, we're basically into flex territory, but obviously also, but numbers-wise, back-end wide receiver to higher-end flex plays on the week, in my opinion. Starting off with Jameson Williams, my first fade of the week here at wide receiver 21. Currently is ECR wide receiver 12, and he's tied as wide receiver 27 via the equalized value, my EV rankings, that leftmost column there. I feel like going up to wide receiver 12's a little too bold for me. We do get the Rams, so there is some upside there. It's also a really tough defense. There's definitely scoring upside in this game. But don't forget who Jameson Williams has been on the season, which is very boom or bust. And so I just think the other names ahead of him that I trust more. Right after him, we're going to get into this group of 4 players who are ranking too high. I don't love the ranking on them. I like some of these opportunities going all the way down, really, the list, kind of more than these guys, but it's also hard to fade them too much. So Ladd McConkey here at wide receiver 22, Courtland Sutton at wide receiver 23. They're playing against Kansas City in Green Bay. Not even great upside matchups. Alrighty, Roo. This is getting choppy. So we're just going to have to re-record here. We were on Devonta Smith going up against Las Vegas. Same with Jameson Williams. There's this boom or bust aspect to his game. A good matchup. And the other guy who we are going to boom, I don't know, there was somebody else. We'll get to that I mentioned in the first time that I recorded this. Welcome back to re-recording number 3. This makes me nervous for the running backs and tight ends and quarterbacks videos. Might have to re-record those too. All right. So Devonta Smith, nervous about in general. Good matchup at least, but also game flow maybe not working in favor of passing the ball a whole lot. Mike Evans, there's obviously some concerns here possibly coming back this week. No guarantee that he plays this week. That would, of course, change some rankings here, make me a little bit more bold on Chris Godwin. And having him ranked ahead of Chris Godwin feels a little bit silly at the same time. Maybe not. I don't know. There are some questions here. Going up against Atlanta, is there some upside there? Maybe I'm too high on Mike Evans. I believe I erased some of my call for help by having to re-record the original intro to this video. But guys, there is just a lot of question marks at wide receivers this week. I've been pulling out my hair. You can see it. My hairdo, not the best, all morning, trying to figure these things out. So after that, we've got Juwan Jennings going up against Tennessee. Once again, the game flow like Devonta Smith could work against that. At the same time, Tennessee's been really good against the run, so maybe they do have to continue to pass quite a bit there in San Francisco. So it kind of works both ways. Chris Godwin against Atlanta, no problems there. Christian Watson, we did see with Jaden Reed coming back. His targets did drop down to 4 targets that game. Was pretty much expecting that to be a thing. 4 targets is tough to live off of. The touchdowns, the production, it's been absolutely fantastic for Christian Watson as of late, so tough to get too low, but also a tough matchup against Denver. So, I don't want to get too high on that. Jakobi Meyers, it's been great since he joined Jacksonville, going against the New York Jets. You could see the upside. You could also see fewer targets this game. I am anticipating them to win this game pretty handily, be running a lot. So that is my concern for Jakobi Meyers and why I'm not higher up on him. DK Metcalf going up against Miami. This is a team that generally teams haven't had to pass a lot against. Could be the same thing here for Pittsburgh. Could not be. I don't know. It's not like DK Metcalf thrives on a lot of targets. It's more so production per target. So that scares me a little bit less here with DK Metcalf. But he is suffering from a sore stomach. I don't know if he ate too much candy or if it's because he took a big hit to his stomach. I know he did. So hopefully he'll be back this week. Might not be, though. So keeping our eyes on his health. Brian Thomas Jr. going against the New York Jets. Once again, you can see why there is some upside to that, and also the concern based on what he's done on the season. But the targets continue to be there for him too, for that opportunity. Khalil Shakir, I don't feel too bad against him against New England. I like him quite a bit this week, and I'm loving Stephon Diggs and Deebo Samuel. And these are more gut calls than anything. There's plenty of reasons that these two might not come through this week, but for Stephon Diggs, average wide receiver matchup against Buffalo. High scoring upside, though, in a game against Buffalo. Very important game that you would think Stephon Diggs is going to be getting up for. You would think that the team will rely on his veteran leadership for this game. Now, the issue is that we're coming off of prior to the bye week, a couple of weeks where Stephon Diggs was not getting on the field a whole lot. His route shares were down. Is that because he's older and he's coming back from injury, and maybe they knew that the bye week was coming? And so I'm expecting him coming off the bye week to be a little bit rejuvenated, get on the field more, be a leader. I'm expecting a touchdown this week from Stephon Diggs against Buffalo and a good game. And Deebo Samuel going up against the New York Giants, it's a very good, one of the best wide receiver matchups. It's a decent implied point total here. Once again, a little bit of a gut feeling in terms of where I have them in the rankings. So these are risky loves for sure. Then I've got Marvin Harrison Jr. and Michael Wilson right behind that. Going up against Houston, implied point total there very low. So I am very nervous about these two. I am currently ranking Marvin Harrison Jr., so that of course hurt Michael Wilson. We went over the with and without earlier in the video when I talked about their usage information. And so that's why I have Marvin Harrison ranked higher than Michael Wilson, but both of them also ranked quite low. I think there's a lot of question marks if we bring them both back here again this week in this bad matchup. I just don't love it very much, and Vegas doesn't love the touchdown upside very much. Then we've got Jaden Higgins here going against Arizona. There are some question marks there that I wasn't able to get him quite as high as Deebo Samuel, Stephon Diggs, who I just like in a little bit more and was the tiebreaker. All these guys right here, very, very close. Darius Slayton, my other love of the week, speed, going for the deep ball, things that killed the Washington Commanders. Darius Slay has had a couple of unlucky breaks as well this season where we might be thinking a little bit more highly of him if a couple of things that just went a little bit differently. So I'm looking for him to make the big play against the third best wide receiver matchup through the first 13 weeks of the season against Washington this week. I'm loving it. I'm betting on it. So let's go. That's going to bring us on to this next tier. We're into flex territory for sure. A little less sure of these guys than I am the tier above, but obviously that DJ Moore, there's reasons to be optimistic about him. Ben Johnson does come out after the game, say that he's surprised at the low amount of usage that they ended up with DJ Moore. We're expecting Rome Odunze to miss yet another week here. Not the best matchup against Cleveland, but can be had. So tough to fade DJ Moore too much, especially with those coaches' comments. Jaden Reed, a little bit boomer bust, not the best matchup there. Second week back from injury, though, so that helps make me feel a little bit better. And early on in the game, they were getting him quite involved. And when they were getting him involved, that offense was probably moving as good as it had been as it did at any point in the game. So you'd look for them to get him more involved yet again. Kayshon Boutte, Jordan Addison. I'm feeling, pretty optimistic about the potential for these guys to have a big play, a big touchdown in these matchups against Buffalo and Dallas. Michael Pittman, Alec Pierce. Not loving the ceiling for either one of them, but we did see them continue to get targeted with Riley and at quarterback, so there is that optimistic. But yeah, I don't like this matchup. Vegas doesn't like it. I still feel like maybe we're even a little bit too high on them. Adonai Mitchell might go a little bit lower in the rankings if Garrett Wilson does in fact come back. Xavier Worthy, not much of a ceiling, but fine with the floor play. Luther Burden, same story. QJ and Keenan Allen, it's been pretty bad. Worse matchups, lower implied point totals than those other two. So just went with the edge of them. Romeo Doubs, you're just basically hoping for a touchdown. Shimrei DK, you're hoping for a touchdown, but think it's less likely just in terms of opportunity, number of opportunities getting near the goal line there. Rashid Shaheed, talked about that in the usage. There is an upside story for him. Jerry Jeudy, I don't fully believe it, trust it. Chicago's defense has been getting better, healthier, and they're getting healthier yet again, quite potentially this week as well, in the secondary specifically. So that could hurt things. But Jerry Jeudy, at the very least, does deserve to be ranked this highly. Isaac Tesla, no Redmond, what's his name? Khalif Raymond. Helped him to get on the field yet again quite a bit more this last week, and we expect there to be plenty of opportunities for touchdowns and everything, and that's where Tesla thrives. Darnell Mooney, Devon Vele, we saw him still get a lot of targets last week, so obviously there are opportunities there, and then that brings us into this final tier. You can check out these rankings on the website. There are links in the description to the rankings as well, so check those out. I got through this, I think, a little bit quicker than in the previous video, so you're welcome for that. T. Higgins, Rome Odunze, Parker Washington, Josh Reynolds, currently not ranking any of those guys. Obviously, several of those names would impact the rankings if they end up getting ranked. Please don't forget to like the video if you made it to the end here. I hope I made all the other announcements that I'm supposed to make in these videos. Who knows? I appreciate you guys. I love you. Let's get on into this week. Let's get let's win some matchups, and once again, I'm very, very open to any of your opinions on who's high, who's low, too high or too low in my rankings. I know that there are guys that you might feel that about. I would love to hear it, and hopefully with like a little bit of evidence as to why you believe that too. But yeah, these wide receiver rankings are not finished yet, especially through this portion of the rankings. Expect some movement probably by the end of the week. All right, peace out.